Good morning, church family. Have you ever sat down to a meal and you're either at home or you're at a restaurant and you take that first bite and you realize it's bland? There's just something missing. The ingredients are fresh. It should all taste amazing. Then you reach for the salt shaker. A few shakes, maybe a few more, or like me, a whole lot more. And then what does the salt do to the food? It makes it taste so much better. The salt didn't add flavor. What did it do? It enhanced the flavor. It made the flavor pop. Salt can transform dishes from just being edible to something that is so much more delicious. So that simple, ordinary example of salt transforming our meal gives us a glimpse into something Jesus was talking about. I've had the incredible privilege of traveling to the Holy Land twice and walking in the footsteps of Christ. And one of the experiences that I really enjoyed is when I took this picture. So we were out on the Sea of Galilee, and we were out on this boat. And so what archaeologists found on the muddy seashore in about sometime in the 80s, they found this boat. And what makes this boat so significant, it doesn't look like much, but this boat has been dated from the life of Christ, the first century. Doesn't look like much, but they were able to look at the design of this boat and actually create a modern version of it. Much larger than it would have been, and it has motors on it. But today we're not concerned with the lake itself, but what can be seen from the lake. It's the Mount of Beatitudes. Here's built a beautiful church. Inside there is tile work that has fossils in it. They've cut stone in such a way that you can see all the beautiful grains and all the different the fossils in there. It does boast some very beautiful views. And this is where the Catholic faith believes Jesus gave the Sermon on the Mount discourse. Rule of thumb, if you are looking for the Sermon on the Mount, look at Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7. But most likely, where this church is built is not the true place where Jesus gave his Sermon on the Mount. Most likely, this unassuming, ordinary, grassy hill, there's no church built there. There's no parking lot for tour buses. It's just an ordinary hillside. Why is this hillside most likely the place where Jesus gave his Sermon on the Mount discourse? Because what's really amazing is it's designed like, of course, by God, designed like an ancient amphitheater. So someone could stand on the seashore and speak, and people sitting up on this hill could perfectly hear them speak. That's why Jesus chose this spot. And it is also a good temperature all year around. And so here, at the beginning of this powerful discourse, Jesus makes a profound statement that resonates with us deeply today. He says, "You are the salt of the earth." Now, I'm a big history buff, and so when I hear salt of the earth, what I hear is a tactic that was used by the Romans. So here's a painting of the Carthaginians. Hannibal of Carthage is famous for taking elephants through the Alps to attack Rome in winter. And so the way the story ends is Rome conquers Carthage. That's why the center of power is in Europe and not in North Africa today. And so when Rome conquered Carthage, what they did is they took a bunch of salt and sowed it into the ground. What does that do? It makes it very difficult to grow crops, if not impossible. But when Jesus is talking about the salt of the earth, I can guarantee you he is not talking about this tactic used by the Romans. So let's open our Bible today, and we're going to go and we're going to read that verse once more. Matthew 5, verse 13. Give me a good hearty amen when you get there. Matthew 5, verse 13. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. So what does it mean to truly be the salt of the earth? Well, it's a very big calling. It's a high calling. And it comes with some serious warnings, as we'll cover. But let's first look at salt in an ancient context. I like to break down the historical context because there is where we can find some answers, okay? So salt for us today is really cheap. It's in everything. Who here likes Celtic salt? I've gotten so used to Celtic salt that when I go to a restaurant and I pick up that table salt, it doesn't taste very good at all. But for us today, salt is everywhere. It's in everything. But in ancient times, salt was incredibly valuable. Before refrigeration, the ancients needed to use salt as a preservative. And it was worth its weight in gold. And in many parts of the world, it was literally worth more than gold. It's kind of weird for us to think about today. Our very word for salary actually comes from the word salt. Did you guys know that? No. It is so important. So back in 2010 and then again in 2023, I got the chance to travel to Egypt. Out of all the places I've been in the world, if I could pick one place to go back to, it would be Egypt. I got to, in 2023, my wife and I went there, and we went scuba diving, and we had lots and lots of fun. And in 2010, I saw the Karnak Temple, and something that was really special is we went to the Cairo Museum, and we saw where this death mask is stored. Can you name the king this belonged to? King Tut, or King Tutankhamun. If you've never seen the treasures from his tomb, it is staggering. Much of it is made out of solid gold. So why did Egypt have so much gold? Well, because they had something on the Sinai Peninsula. They had vast salt mines there. And so many people back then cared more about preserving their food, adding flavor to their food, than they did having gold. So they used their salt to trade with people to get their gold. And so gold literally was, salt rather, was more valuable than gold. But I don't think Jesus was concerned about salt's ability or its value in the world, or its ability to preserve food. Okay? So why was gold, or rather salt, used as currency? It was much more important to preserve your food, right? But the importance placed on salt was not unique to the Egyptians. We can see this throughout all the cultures in ancient times, especially with the Israelites. So the Israelites saw salt as a valuable resource. It was so valuable to them that salt played an integral part in the sacrificial system. Leviticus tells us that salt had to be offered with every offering. Did you know that? And it was also cast into the fire as in the use of incense. So most of the crowd sitting there that day, when they heard Jesus talking about salt, I could imagine them thinking, okay, we know exactly what Jesus is talking about. He is talking about the use of salt in the sacrificial system. But as Jesus continues, they probably thought, wait a second, we got this wrong. Jesus was not concerned with salt's earthly value. He wasn't concerned with its ability to preserve meat or its role in sacrifices. So what was Jesus talking about? Okay, let's keep looking at salt in an ancient context. So we can see salt was used as a symbol of healing. In 2 Kings, Elisha used salt to heal a stream, a river, because it was bitter. Now, it was not the salt that healed the river, but most likely it was a test for the people of that town of would they give up a whole bowl of salt so that God would heal their water. Later on in 2 Kings, we see another story. We see a story of Naaman. Naaman comes, and Elisha tells him to go wash in the Jordan River 7 times. Now, there's a significance behind the 7 times, but that's going to be for another sermon. But it was not the river that healed him, right? What was that for Naaman? It was a test. God wanted to see if Naaman was willing to do something in order to be healed. And that's what I believe was going on with this town that had water that was not, they weren't able to drink. And so that was just a symbol. But today, people come by the thousands to the Dead Sea. They come to the Dead Sea to find healing. Because did you know that the salt content in the Dead Sea is so high that it can actually heal your skin? It can actually help treat skin cancer in some cases. And so thousands of people flock to the Dead Sea every year to do that. And then tens of thousands of people flock to the Dead Sea just to float on it. Because it is so salty, it's 10 times saltier than the ocean, that you can float right on top. And it is quite the experience. And you don't even have to wear sunscreen because you are more than 1,500 feet below sea level. And the salt also protects your skin. However, Jesus was not concerned with salt's ability to heal. You're probably wondering, get on with it. What was Jesus talking about? Another function of salt is its role in baking bread. So have you ever accidentally added too much salt or not enough salt to your bread recipe? Have you guys ever done that? Really? Oh, you guys are amazing bakers. So I did this once. I wanted to try this just to see what would happen. In preparing for this sermon, what I did is I took a recipe and I made 3 loaves of bread. I made 1 loaf of bread exactly the way the recipe told me to as the control. Then I did another loaf without any salt. I completely skipped the salt. And another one, I put 3 to 4 times the amount of salt. Can you take a guess what happened to these 3 loaves? So the first loaf that had no salt, it didn't rise, and it was, how should I say, disgusting. It wasn't very good, and I wasn't expecting it to be good at all. Then the one with too much salt, what do you think happened to that? It was extremely dense and super salty. I felt like I was eating bread baked underneath the ocean or something. It was just so salty. And what happened is the salt, there was so much salt, it counteracted the yeast. It killed the yeast. So it didn't rise. And the one that was just the right amount was perfect. So too much or not enough can make a big difference in your bread. And it just amazes me how important salt is for flavor in our foods. Even with something sweet, like chocolate chip cookies, you would expect, okay, we want to load in a lot of sugar in this thing. But you need to make sure you put salt in it. Because if you don't, it's not going to be very good. It's really not going to be worth the calories if you do not have that very important salt in it. And who here's like salted caramel? I always thought that was so weird growing up. I'm not a big fan of sweet and salty together. I'm a fan of it on its own. And so I always thought that was weird. But it enhances the flavor. But Jesus wasn't concerned with salt's role in baking bread. So what was he talking about? Let's go back to our verse, but we're going to read a few extra verses. We're in Matthew 5, and we're going to read verse 13, but then we're going to go to verse 16. Matthew 5, 13 through 16. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing, but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. So, did you catch that? Not only are we the salt of the earth, but we are the light of the world. We are to reflect the one true light, Jesus himself, to everyone around us. So, the question is, how is salt and light related? Because that is going to give us the key to understanding what Jesus is talking about. So we've figured out Jesus isn't concerned about salt's monetary value, its ability to heal, or even its role in baking. He's concerned with one major function of salt that we have not mentioned yet. Can you take a guess? What are some other functions of salt? I think I just heard it. Say it louder. Dana, did you say it? Say it louder.
Makes things taste good.
Makes things taste good. Yeah, but there's another one. Yeah, it enhances the flavor, tenderizes. What I'm looking for is it makes people thirsty. Salt makes people thirsty. Now, who here likes popcorn? I love growing popcorn in my backyard, and some people look at me like I'm crazy, like, wait a second, popcorn? How do you grow popcorn? Like you do all other corn. So what makes popcorn, specifically movie theater popcorn, so delicious and so bad for you? It's the salt and the butter. I don't know how they do that, but no matter how much butter and salt you put in your popcorn at home, you can never get it to taste like movie theater popcorn. Only thing I can think of is they add chemicals, but that's not the point here. So when you eat a lot of salty popcorn, what happens? You get so thirsty. That's why at movie theaters, they sell popcorn, Slurpees, and drinks. Your body is wired so that when you have salt, your body craves water. That's the key. Your body craves water. You get thirsty. This is how your body tells you to drink more water. This is what Jesus means by salt of the earth. He wants us to be so salty in our lives that it drives others to the living water that only He can provide. Amen? Let's look at an important story found in John chapter 4. It's a familiar story to many. It's fondly known as the encounter with the woman at the well. So in this story, Jesus was traveling with his disciples. And what's interesting, every time you see Jesus traveling, he is preaching on the move. And so Jesus and his disciples come in to Samaria, to a city called Sychar. It's near the plot of ground that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there. And Jesus was exhausted from his journey. And he was sitting there by the well. His disciples had gone into the city to buy food. And this well, when he was sitting there by the well, this was the middle of the day. People did not come draw water in the middle of the day. But he met a woman who did. He asks the woman, "Can you draw me some water?" And she says, "Well, wait a second. You're a Jew. I'm a Samaritan. Jews and Samaritans aren't supposed to have anything in common. We're not supposed to speak to each other." I'm guessing her jaw probably dropped when he asked that. And Jesus answered her, I love how Jesus cleverly uses the if you knew the gift of God and who that it was that was saying this to you, "Give me a drink," you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. And the woman said to him, what? "Sir, give me this water so I don't have to come back here to the well." She wasn't quite getting it. And as they further spoke, it changed her life. She ran back to the city and told everyone, "This man has told me everything about my life." Jesus is calling us to live our lives in such a radical way that it gives others around us an unquenchable thirst that only He can satisfy. Isn't that amazing? How God uses us, sinful, fallen humans. He calls us not only to be the light of the world, but also the salt of the earth, making people thirsty for Christ, showing them what they are missing, leading them to the fountain of everlasting life, which is Jesus Christ. Have you ever thought of what you would say if someone asked you to share your testimony? Who here has thought of that before? Who has a testimony ready to go? So if I called you up right now, I'm just joking. If you have not spent some time thinking about your testimony, it's pretty simple. Where were you before Christ? How you found Christ? And where you are after you have found Christ. Very simple. I would encourage you to think about that. So, we need to be the salt of the earth to make people thirst for Jesus. So how do we do that? How do we become the salt of the earth? Well, first, our saltiness shows up in three main ways in our life. The first, we've talked about this, salt acts as a flavoring agent. So we are called to bring flavor to the world around us. This means showing grace, truth, and love to everyone that we come in contact with. Think about your home. Can you bring more patience and joy to your family? What about at work? Are you known for your honesty and positive attitude? What about in your community? Simple acts of kindness, maybe a friendly word, listening to the struggles of a neighbor, even when you're busy, it can make a huge difference in their life. This does not mean to be preachy. It's about living out the gospel so genuinely that people will ask, why are you so different? Then that's when you share your testimony. Another way we become the salt of the earth, salt acts as a preservative. So just as salt in the past has preserved food from spoiling, as Christians, we're called to stand against what's wrong and corrupt in our society. This means making good choices even when it's hard. As this world gets worse and worse, we are going to have to make some hard decisions. And we want to make sure that we rely on Christ to help us make those hard decisions. Avoid gossip. I know that's hard. And speak up for what's right. So another thing that salt does is it can be an irritant. So when I went to the Dead Sea, if you go to the Dead Sea and you go in there and you're floating, if you have a cut somewhere that you did not know about, you will find out about it very quickly. It irritates your skin. It irritates the cuts. But by irritating it, it helps it heal. Being salt can mean bringing gentle conviction, sometimes causing a little bit of discomfort for the sake of spiritual healing. This isn't about judging others. This is about speaking the truth in love, because we care about our fellow humans. And Jesus gives us a serious warning. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out underfoot and trampled. This applies to our daily walk. So how do we lose our flavor? It happens through dilution. when we become so much like the world that we don't look very different. We look like the world, we talk like the world, we act like the world. If that's the case, we're in the world. We are the world. And so when we start adopting values and habits of the world, we water down our saltiness. Another way we can lose our flavor happens through contamination. Letting bad influences and sin corrupt our beliefs. I think of the time of Constantine, when paganism literally entered the church. And we could be tempted to say, well, that happened back then. That happened 1,700 years ago. It's not going to happen again. It can happen again if we're not careful. And so if we're not careful, daily exposure to negativity can slowly poison our witness. So all the bad stuff you're seeing on the news, turn off the TV. The Bible tells us it's going to get bad. Another way we can lose our flavor is inactivity or isolation. If the salt shaker stays on the table and is not used, what good is it? It's not good for anything. If we do not engage with the world, our faith cannot make a difference. That's what the religious leaders were doing during the days of Christ. And another way we can lose our flavor is hypocrisy. Saying we believe one thing, but living another way. And it makes our witness meaningless. A salt shaker full of tasteless powder is good for nothing, right? This is the severe consequences of losing our spiritual usefulness. And if we have lost our saltiness, how do we get it back? How can we get it back? First, we must stay connected to Jesus. Our spiritual flavor doesn't come from us. Just like when it says we are the light of the world, the light doesn't come from us. We're like the moon that reflects the light of Christ. It comes straight from Christ. So every day, make sure you take time to read your Bible, spend time in prayer, and connect with other believers. People sometimes ask me, do I really need to go to church? After all, I got the live stream. I can watch it online. And I tell them, church is so important because we spend time with fellow believers and we connect with them. Another way to get your flavor back is embrace being different. Now, if you've come to any of my trainings on how to be good disciples, you've heard me say, don't be different for different's sake. That's not what I'm saying here. Don't be different just to be different. But inevitably, if you are following Christ and you don't look and act and speak like the world, you are going to be different. We are different. So we need to embrace that and not be scared of it, not hide it. To be salt, we can't completely blend in. We must live out our Christian values boldly in our daily choices, with our interactions with our coworkers, with our conversations with strangers, with the entertainment we watch, how you spend your money, and how you treat everyone makes a big difference. Thirdly, be active and purposeful. Salt doesn't work. It only works when it is spread out. What happens if you take that salt shaker on one part of your food and you just keep going and going and going? It makes that one part really salty, but the rest of the food, it does not bring the flavor to it. Your saltiness is meant to be sprinkled everywhere you go. not just at church or at church functions. So we need to look for chances to serve and speak the truth and show Christ's love in our families, to our coworkers, to our friends, to our neighbors, and sometimes even the hardest thing is our own family members. Often can be the hardest thing. Finally, if you have realized you lost some of your saltiness, there is always a way back through repentance and recommitment. There is always a way back. Confess where you've slipped. And I know it can be very hard to say you're wrong. I know it's very, very hard. But we must confess where we have slipped up to Christ. And guess what? He will restore that saltiness to us. All we have to do is ask. The most amazing thing is that God's grace is always there to restore us and empower us. If it's not about earning your way, but it's about actively participating in the plan of salvation that Jesus has for us.